Swiss Frankie.
Yeah, full tribe in the building. Full tribe static addict. Melchizedek media. Melchizedek music. Yeah,
www.swissfrankie.com.
Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrews we got next. I preach the Melchizedek. Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrews we got next. So never abandon your post.
Keep your eyes on the prize. I'm not talking about no dollar sign. The kingdom's at hand, that's the plan, my man. Spiritual gifts is what I store up. Waiting for the sun to show up. Then Babylon gon' burn up, and them gold streets gon' turn up. There'll be love for thy neighbor, we'll be heavenly favor. God, you love's what you get when you live in the script. So tune in to this vibration. We from his holy nation, here to give words to the ears that hear. Screaming Yahshua's coming till he appears. Cry loud and spare not bruise. Now that script shakes, strong in the faith in this heavenly race. Washed by the blood of Yahweh Shah, that's grace.
Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrews we got next. I preach the Melchizedek. Stay focused. Yeah, how what we choose, we worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused, don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused, it's for like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused, Hebrews we got next. So never abandon your post.
Shalom, family. Shalom, Brother Benai coming at you with another video. In this video, I would like to expose the hardened hearts of the modern day Christian. In recent past, those who call themselves the body of Christ has unknowingly demonstrated their hypocrisy and don't actually believe what they teach. They quote the scriptures that since God is not a respecter of person, then neither should we be. But when given the opportunity to actually live this out, they failed miserably. By choosing to honor, praise, and never forget the salvation of the European Jews,
partitioning of Palestine into an Arab and a Jewish state. On November 29th, 1947, although the streets are crowded, there's a curious stillness in Palestine. It's a day of waiting, a day of prayer. At this moment, the United Nations is voting on the resolution for partitioning that means so much to Ben-Gurion and to millions of Jews everywhere.
Afghanistan, no. Argentina, abstention. Australia.
The UN session is being transmitted to Palestine, where huddled over radios are listening to loudspeakers in the streets. The people are avidly following the count.
Soviet Union, yes. United Kingdom, abstain. The United States, yes. 6, 10. The resolution of the Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 30 against, 10 abstentions.
At last, there's going to be a Jewish state. 6 months from now, in May 1948, the British mandate will end. And 50 years after Herzl, it will no longer be a dream. Cyprus, they also dance, for all illegals will soon be free. Free to go to the land of Israel.
While at the same time ignoring, rebuking, and flat out denying the prophecy of salvation said from the mouths of the so-called African Americans, who were also professed to be bloodline descendants of the Yahudians, dispersed and exiled from Jerusalem in the 1st century. For the purpose of this video, we'll call them the Israelites.
And I'd like to now bring up another interesting place that you're finding descendants of the Israelites, but may not necessarily be from the 10 tribes, but will also play a role. And it shouldn't be overlooked. It's a very serious scenario. Is in Africa. Africa has perhaps hundreds of millions of people with this identity right now of being from the people of Israel. Does that mean they were from the 10 tribes? Likely not. We were taught by the historians and within our own traditions that when the Romans conquered Judea, a few hundred years after that the tribes of Israel went into exile, perhaps millions of Judeans were sold into slavery, into Africa, into Rome, deep into Africa. And if you look now, you're seeing people who are most likely the descendants of those slaves who kept true. I'd like to bring up a few specific examples because they're going to be game changers. One of them wrote letters to Israel when it became a state. And they said, we're Israelites out in Africa. You know, everyone laughed at them and they said, African Israelites, these people are just trying to jump on the first world country bandwagon. They're living in a third world country, they got nothing. We're coming to Israel, we got innovation, technology. So they're trying to get on this train because there's such a thing called the right of return. All descendants of the Jewish people from around the world were able to move to Israel. So they said we are also. And everyone kind of laughed at them, like I said. And a few people took it serious and went out there and started studying them, learned about their culture. And a professor from Duke University went out there and did DNA testing on them. And he showed not only did they share Semitic genes from people who were in Yemen and back to the Middle East, these gentlemen, a large percent of them, have the Y chromosome to be Kohanim, to be priests. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, a priest is a specific family clan of the nation of Israel who come from Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first priest. And anyone descended from Aaron has the status title priest. And we found that these men in this village in South Africa called Lemba, L-E-M-B-A, carry this genetic marker to let us know that they share the same as from the Sephardic and the Ashkenaz and the population of the people in Israel today. They share the same exact DNA marker. That's mind-blowing. So everyone kind of got humbled a little bit who laughed at them and said, now what? Now what do we do about this? This could have tremendous implications. Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them, also Christians, like I spoke about before, how that could happen to the children of Israel very easily. But also a lot of them are now coming out and converting back or adopting the rules of the Torah without all the paganism that they've been practicing for hundreds of years. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the transmission of the Torah were converts from Rome. You have a man named Onkelos who wrote a commentary on the Torah, unprecedented, that we still learn today. He was a convert. Some of the largest pillars on the transmission today were Roman converts. So here we are, we're Caucasian Jewish people, and now you have people in Africa saying that they're the real people of Israel. It can't be ruled out at all. We know they were sold into slavery. We know now that they're fulfilling prophecies by saying, we're coming back.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise in the U.S., and in fact, according to the Anti-Defamation League, a record number of anti-Semitic incidents occurred in the country last year. Some of the latest high-profile incidents are reigniting a conversation about how to stop them. Entertainer Nick Cannon and NFL wide receiver Deshaun Jackson apologized after being criticized for making anti-Semitic comments, and both said they would learn more about Jewish culture and history. National correspondent Jerika Duncan joins us now. Jerika, good morning. So what could they expect to learn?
Well, good morning to you, Tony. You know, the African-American community and the Jewish community, the relationship has been at times very strong, sometimes contentious and even complex. So we decided to take a look back at how we got here and what lies ahead.
This Instagram post sparked an unexpected conversation. Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Deshaun Jackson posted a quote he attributed to Adolf Hitler. It read in part, "Jews will blackmail America."
I believe that this is only through education, that all people are the same. No difference as far as I'm concerned.
So Holocaust survivor Edward Mosberg turned it into a teaching moment. The 94-year-old invited Jackson to visit Auschwitz, where nearly 1 million Jews were murdered during Hitler's regime.
He immediately accepted.
What does that say about Deshaun Jackson?
Well, to say, as he's a gentleman.
Mosberg says he lost 16 relatives in the Holocaust. He now travels the world to teach people about the horrors he and millions of others faced.
How did you survive?
By luck. That's all.
Mosberg's and Jackson's story of acceptance and learning is one that derives from a deep and rich history. Black and Jewish Americans have linked arm in arm in their fights for equality. Terrence Johnson is an associate professor at Georgetown who teaches a class called Blacks and Jews in America.
There's something about religion and politics that are deeply ingrained within the traditions, both within Blacks and American Jews. And so when they see themselves fighting against, say, segregation, Jim Crow, or anti-Semitism, in the back of their mind, they're thinking of the Exodus motif, this idea that God is with them in history.
Their intertwined paths brought them together during the Civil Rights Movement. During what became known as Freedom Summer in 1964, 2 Jewish men and 1 black man, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, and James Chaney, were murdered in Mississippi while trying to register Black Americans to vote. Their deaths and the subsequent media coverage sparked a major change in the portrayal of the movement.
America must not remain silent.
And at the historic 1963 March on Washington, it was Rabbi Joachim Prince who spoke just before his friend, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most shameful and the most tragic problem is silence.
But the long-standing relationship has turned fraught at times, with some members of both groups feeling that their concerns were no longer a priority for their partners. The Crown Heights riot of 1991 in Brooklyn saw tensions between Black and Jewish communities escalate to violence, including the murder of an Australian Jewish student.
Both groups are trying to fight against racism, anti-Semitism. Both are trying to assimilate, but both are having a very difficult time in the process. And both are actually pushed and forced into a kind of strange and asymmetrical relationship.
But someone who believed in the power of a good relationship was Congressman John Lewis.
We sponsored Black Jewish Young Leaders retreats, and Congressman Lewis would spend the evening with us, helping Blacks and Jews.
Sherry Frank worked side by side with Congressman Lewis on the Black Jewish Coalition in Atlanta.
We marched to mark important events. We spoke out in support of renewal of the Voting Rights Act. I see the future of Black-Jewish relations even strengthened by the stress and the polarization and the bigotry and anti-Semitism and racism that's just flourishing in our world today.
As for Edward Mosberg, he says he will continue until his last breath to bring blacks and Jews together.
Does it feel like African Americans and Jewish people should be more connected because of our plights?
Not more connected, they should be highly connected, okay? Because the Jewish people went through the slavery in Europe, okay? And the people here were slavery here by their own people, because it was wrong.
Now, this video is not meant to discuss or debate which one of these two groups are the real children of Israel, nor is it meant to question, deny, or even confirm the atrocities that have been reported to happen to both of them. But this video is to shed light on the sanctimonious spirit of an outside party, a third party, whom we'll call the modern Christian. When the modern Christian hear the Israelites quote Christ's words written in John chapter 4, verse 22, that salvation is of the Jews, they immediately rebuttal with, for God so loved the world. And when the Israelites quote Jeremiah chapter 16, verses 14 and 15, which reads,
Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, The Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers.
It is said unto them that there is no such thing as a second Exodus. And when the Israelites say that one day they'll go home and rebuild their kingdom, where their noblemen will be of their own brethren, and the Gentiles will work for them, as written multiple times in the scriptures.
Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents, and have mercy on his dwelling places. And the city shall be builded upon her own heap, and the palace shall remain after the manner thereof. And out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, and the voice of them that make merry. And I will multiply them, and they shall not be few. I will also glorify them, and they shall not be small. Their children also shall be as aforetime, and their congregation shall be established before me. And I will punish all that oppress them. And their nobles shall be of themselves, and their governor shall proceed from the midst of them. And I will cause him to draw near, and he shall approach unto me. For who is this that engaged his heart to approach unto me, saith the Lord? And ye shall be my people, and I will be your God. Thus saith the Lord God, In the day that I shall have cleansed you from all your iniquities, I will also cause you to dwell in the cities, and the wastes shall be builded, and the desolate land shall be tilled, whereas it lay desolate in the sight of all that passed by. And they shall say, This land that was desolate is become like the Garden of Eden, and the waste and desolate and ruined cities are become fenced, and are inhabited. Then the heathen that are left round about you shall know that I the Lord build the ruined places, and plant that was desolate. I the Lord have spoken it, and I will do it. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. And they shall build the old wastes, they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers.
But despite what's written, the modern Christian laughs at the Israelite and denies that form of salvation. They insist that salvation is for all believers, and that they, the modern Christian, are the other fold, or lost sheep. So when salvation comes, it will come for them as well. And when the Israelites say that salvation is being delivered from the hands of your enemies,
as he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant.
The modern Christian thought they heard the Israelites say that the Gentiles can't be saved from the lake of fire, ignoring all the times that the Israelites received salvation in the Old Testament. Did not the Most High send Moses to save the Israelites and deliver them from the hands of the Egyptians?
This Moses whom they refused, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge? The same did God send, to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel which appeared to him in the bush. He brought them out after that he had shown wonders and signs in the land of Egypt, and in the Red Sea, and in the wilderness 40 years.
And did not the Most High send King David to save Keilah and deliver them from the hands of the Philistines?
Then they told David, saying, Behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and smite these Philistines? And the Lord said unto David, Go, and smite the Philistines, and save Keilah. And David's men said unto him, Behold, we be afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we come to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord yet again. And the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into thine hand. So David and his men went to Keilah, and fought with the Philistines, and brought away their cattle, and smote them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah.
Did not the Maccabees save Israel and deliver them from the hands of the Grecians on multiple occasions?
Wherefore Simon called his 2 eldest sons, Judas and John, and said unto them, I and my brethren and my father's house have ever from my youth unto this day fought against the enemies of Israel. And things have prospered so well in our hands, that we have delivered Israel oftentimes. But now I am old, and ye, by God's mercy, are of a sufficient age. Be ye instead of me and my brother, and go and fight for our nation, and the help from heaven be with you.
So why are the Israelites ignored and scoffed at when they say that Yah will save them and deliver them from America? And why does the modern Christian act as if that's not what salvation means? That since the death and resurrection of Christ, salvation solely means to be saved from the lake of fire or from the wrath of God. When less than 100 years ago, the world rejoiced when the European Jews were saved from the hands of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party.
The resolution of the Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 30 against, 10 abstentions.
At last, there's going to be a Jewish state. 6 months from now, in May 1948, the British mandate will end. And 50 years after Herzl, it will no longer be a dream.
But the world rejoiced because the European Jews were brought out of the land of their enemies, and their noblemen rose from the midst of themselves. They set up their own body to govern themselves, and a hierarchy in the social class where the Gentiles are second-class citizens.
In the war years that followed, only a few thousand of Europe's millions of unhappy Jews were able to escape the fascist tyranny and seek refuge in Palestine. By the war's end, hundreds of thousands of survivors, without homes or possessions, faced a future without hope unless some place on earth could be found for them. To Europe's surviving Jews, free access to Palestine, their land of promise, is today more urgently needed than at any time in the long and tragic history of the people of Israel. Convinced that the excuse for keeping Palestine closed had ended with the war, the Jews of America brought strong pressure to bear on Britain.
This conference urges the British government to abrogate the policy set out in the White Paper of 1939 and to open Palestine to unrestricted Jewish immigration and resettlement.
Refugee Jews able to get to Palestine find there a community to a large extent self-governing. In the Jewish Agency, representing the Jewish people in the development of their national home, are centralized the administrative and executive functions of the community. The Anglo-Palestine Bank financed much of Palestine's war-created industry, and in cooperation with the Jewish Agency, has grub-staked thousands of refugees. Palestine's prosperity is reflected in Tel Aviv's own stock exchange, where any fluctuations in national stocks and bonds are watched with an eagle eye by the local brokers. Investments in hydroelectric plants alone amount to millions of dollars. The waters of the River Jordan supply the main source of power for scores of Palestine's industrial establishments, which produce millions of dollars worth of goods a year, much of it available for export. Many industries have benefited by the skill of trained craftsmen who escaped from Europe. A whole new diamond cutting industry has been built, and its future assured by agreement with the British Diamond Trust. In recent years, a modest start in shipbuilding has been made in the harbor at Tel Aviv, and the facilities which in war were devoted to the construction of minesweepers are now being used to turn out boats for Palestine's fast-growing fishing fleet. On the shores of the Dead Sea, hundreds of feet below sea level, new plants extract thousands of tons of potash, bromine, and other valuable chemicals each year. To improve industrial processes and develop new products, constant research is carried on by world-famous scientists like Dr. Chaim Weizmann and his sister Anna. Ensuring the continuity of Orthodox religion, a Talmud school trains future rabbis who, at an early age, begin to acquire the knowledge and wisdom for which they will be revered in future years. Traditionally an intellectual people, the Jews have established Hebrew University, on whose faculty are some of Europe's most famous scholars, and which is today the center of Palestine's cultural renaissance. No less important than education is the physical well-being of Palestine's children. In the last 25 years, the health of the people of Palestine has been immeasurably improved, due chiefly to the work of Jewish hospitals and laboratories. Hadassah Hospital, supported by contributions from the United States, trains scores of nurses who will go out to the pioneer settlements to aid in the development of their country.
It was a celebration throughout all of Christendom. The European Jews finally went home after wandering the earth in exile, and no one told them that they were neither Jew nor Greek. No one claimed to be joint heirs of the promises, and Christians didn't show up in droves to stake claim to this new promised land. Until this day, the European Jews receive billions of dollars in foreign aid every year. Yet not one modern Christian decided that they should partake in the dividing of those blessings, nor did the European Jew offer to share. The European Jew's salvation was accepted without question or pushback. It seemed as if the modern Christian was genuinely happy for the European Jews. But that same sympathy and empathy given to the European Jews is not given to the so-called African American, who are also said to be the children of Israel. People who have been oppressed for over 400 years, exiled from the land of their fathers, taken captive into a land that's not their own, where they are truly not welcome and have no place to go. Instead of praying for these people's salvation, like the modern Christian prayed for the European Jews, the modern Christian denies that form of salvation, as if the gathering of Israel out of all the countries isn't written. Yet that same salvation that isn't written, the modern Christian believed, praised, and promised to never forget when it happened to the European Jews in the 1900s. So what does this act of hypocrisy say about the modern day Christian? Are they the same respecters of persons they said not to be? Is their doctrine of neither Jew nor Gentile correct? Because if so, then that would mean that the European Jews have cheated the modern Christian out of their share of the promises. It would also mean that the European Jew owes the modern Christian over 70 years of back pay, and that every last one of the modern Christians have a plot of land in Israel waiting for them to stake claim. That's something that the modern Christian should really consider. Or could it be that the modern Christian is a respecter of person? Could it be that the Most High has exposed the true hearts of the modern Christian? As this current awakening coming to its fullness, and more information proving that the so-called African American are the true descendants of the Yahudians, why is there not a desire to send them home and let them reestablish themselves as a nation? Why can't they live amongst themselves and rule over themselves? If you actually have an answer for this question, then this video is for you. And I would like to leave you with one last thought before I go. Imagine if the Europeans are not the true descendants of the Yahudians, but the so-called African Americans are. Whoa.
Stay focused. Yeah, how we choose? We worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused. Don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused. It's like blood in my chest. The word manifested in flesh. Stay focused. Hebrew, we got next. I preach the McKells and Dags. Stay focused. Yeah, how we choose? We worship in spirit and truth. Stay focused. Don't be a fool. Study to show thyself approved. Stay focused.